Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's community office hours. So today is really exciting. We have one of our community heroes, Evan, who has done this before, and he's going to give us a few little demos, I think, around Nix and Gitpod and things like that. So I'm really looking forward to learning a lot in the next hour or so, or half hour. If this is your first time live with us, there is a little on the top right hand corner of the screen, there's a chat function which you can go into and like just send messages on there throughout the session. Feel free to also put any questions that you have for Evan there, and then after Evan's done his demo and everything like that, we can go through the questions. And yeah, also if you're not speaking, please make sure that you're on mute. Cool. I think I will pass on to Evan now to do an intro on himself and start his demo.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Evan. I work for a company called Lofty. We specialize in software. We're a software development agency. We specialize in geospatial data and basic field data collection and web apps. I was a Gitpod user before I joined Lofty though. So I've been a Gitpod user for quite a while, and I brought Gitpod to my organization. So we use Gitpod as part of our application development practice, and it's an essential tool for many of our workers who are doing our web development. The only workers we haven't covered yet are native mobile apps folks, but we're getting there. We'll cover as we go. So yeah, one of the things that comes up quite often though is we use Gitpod a lot for application development, but our infrastructure process it was a little bit nascent at this company, and so we were kind of developing what are the key tool sets that we need to be successful deploying our infrastructure for our clients. And one thing that was really missing was we had Gitpod and we can customize our environments. That's pretty good. We can bring in our secrets safely, and we can operate from a Gitpod workspace and manipulate with Terraform all of our standard infrastructure that we need. But the bring up time was really slow. We needed a lot of devs with a lot of local workspaces and a lot of network access that we weren't quite comfortable with. And so we started asking ourselves, okay, well, we've got a Gitpod workspace here. We got a lot of configurability. I could write a Gitpod Docker file and install a bunch of things, but that's going to be that might be a little too slow for us. We have created ways that allow our developers to load a Gitpod workspace, and using Nix Flakes technology, we can actually preload the packages that they need to do infrastructure development. Things like having Terraform, having a kubectl client, having, in our case, we deployed a Talos Linux as one of our things, so having Talos Cuddle available. There's various tools that you need to do that. You can shim them into a Gitpod Docker file. Totally valid, totally okay to do that. I absolutely encourage you to do that. You take advantage of pre-builds and it's fast. This is a different way to do it using Nix, and this lets local devs have their ability to do that too. So what I'm going to show is one of our infrastructure repos where we configure that, and I may have to bail out and go secret mode for you guys on some things. But for the most part, we should be okay. If I get to a sensitive value, please tell me. I would appreciate that. Anyways, so we're going to start with our Greenway project. So Lofty is a company, we're a geospatial company. We actually have deployed in the last 2 weeks, an application for the local community, which is map.razorbackgreenway.org. So this is actually a map of the local Northwest Arkansas area in concert with the Razorback Greenway Alliance. And this lets us map out the Razorback Greenway, which is a trail that covers biking and walking all the way from the north of Bella Vista all the way to the south in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and some various points of interest along the way, and that's our application that we developed. In order to do this, though, there's an application, there's a web server here. We got some infrastructure that we got to stand up. So in support of that, we have infra repos. So we do template infra repos and template app repos. Our application repo, our infrastructure repo, we can just click Gitpod. What we'll do is load into the Gitpod workspace, and when we get started, we'll load in and get to a terminal that has all of our tools available after the workspace is started. We use a couple different pieces of technology that are already in the workspace full image by default. So if you're just clicking Gitpod on a repo, a lot of this stuff is there today. You won't have to configure a Docker file. This is stuff that just is out of the box. So right now, the first thing that's loading is an application called direnv. That's basically a directory environment. So it's a per directory project environment that allows you to have an environment of installed applications per directory on a computer. In our case, this is the directory workspace Greenway infra loaded up by Gitpod. And what it's doing right now is there's a small line at this invar-c called use space flake. And what that does is it keys into this file, which is a Nix flake. And our Nix flake defines a couple things for us. It basically defines, hey, we want to have a dev shell and we want to have some tools available in that dev shell. So if we go to the shells directory in cates.nix, we'll see that it's going to make a shell and it's going to have some packages installed in it. It's going to have the AWS CLI available. It's going to have curl. It's going to have cookie cutter. It's going to have HTTP. It's going to have K9s for those who like a little GUI flavor to their Kubernetes. It's going to have kubectl for those who prefer the raw command line. We've got Terraform available. We've even got the Terraform language server. Thrown DAL in there for some configuration things that we do. That's the gist of it. And the other aspect is we can also do shell hooks. So if we've got like a package like Starship that's out there, that allows us to have a configured prompt. So what we can do is we can say direnv reload, and we'll have our running. So let me think. What do we want to look at? If we look at kubectl -- version, right, we'll have all of our version info for kubectl that's at 123.10. If we needed the AWS CLI version, we could get that. So we could see AWS version or AWS version. I kind of bash my way through there. So that's 2.7.20 running on 3.10.6 of Python. Made available in our environment. So devs have their tools that they need to do their job. So an interesting thing comes in here next, which is we want to talk to our cluster. Well, we have a deployed cluster running our application. We need secrets to go get to it. So what I'm going to go do, I'm going to go grab a kubeconfig real quick and dump it in. I'm going to maybe move this over while I do it, just in case. Okay, close that. Okay. All right, so nobody can see everything. We're going to export kubeconfig equal to ./EKS kubeconfig. If we K9s into that, and we go up, there we go. There's our kube environment and all our deployments. We ask for the daemon sets. We can see the daemon sets that are deployed. We ask for the deployments. In the default namespace, we'll see our production and stage applications. We want to see logs. We can see logs. We want to open a shell. We want to scale. That's our ability to do that. Pretty standard CLI Kubernetes tools that a lot of people are used to, but made available through Flakes in an easy-to-go workspace. So time to solve an infrastructure issue is lowered for our teams, right? If we need someone to be able to get up to date and get up to speed and fix an infrastructure issue, they can rapidly launch a terminal. Yeah, maybe you've got a crusty old Unix guy though on your team. Maybe he doesn't like loading up VS Code in the browser and doing all this. That happens. We have them, and I love them. One of my favorites is two of our engineers on another project. They were having a lot of trouble with VS Code. They just could not get into the groove. They could not figure it out. They could not take the time to invest to learn VS Code. And that's fine. That's totally cool. So what they do is they boot up a Gitpod workspace and they run a really little special command and they shell into the workspace and load NeoVim because that's who they are and that's what they like doing. They still use Gitpod. They just use their own tools and nothing's wrong with that. So I want to show you guys a little script that we wrote up, and I want to kind of show you the magic of Nix that can help you with sharing dev tools across your team, right? So what we're looking at here is a file called gpinter.py, right? And what this file does is it's actually an executable file that runs with something called a shebang in Linux. So it will basically interpret everything after the bang Is something wrong with sharing my screen? Or are we okay?
All good. I
Okay.
can still see it.
Okay. Sorry. And I can make font bigger too as well. If that bothers you. Sorry. So yes, we can basically shell in and load a custom environment that will allow us to run a Python program. And we don't have to worry about, hey, do you have Python 3.10 installed? Hey, do you have these packages installed? Hey, do you have like X, Y, and Z? It's just I send this file to my colleague and he runs it. So we can do something like .gpenter, and then we can spec the URL for our workspace. And now we can shell into that workspace and get a terminal remotely. And it's got everything that we had before, right? So AWS -- version. It's got K9S in it, right? But our K9S isn't going to work because we don't have kubeconfig set. Oh, it says swap your application to resume. Oh, hold on. Drop stream.
Yeah, maybe try resharing it.
Yep, so I think that was part of that little drop there. Can everybody see my screen again? Yep.
Yes.
Sorry, and I typed right quit. You're welcome. All right, so if everybody could see my screen again, did I lose you at the gpenter, I think? Sorry about that. Yeah, so that's the gpenter.py file, and it's very simple. All we're doing is just piecing out the user from the workspace, and I'm happy to share that back to you guys and throw it in a gist and give you all a link. It's fine. And basically what we can do with that program is what I just did before. We'll call gpenter.py and we'll give it the URL to our workspace, and that'll run SSH for us and get us into our workspace. So as long as we do export kubeconfig equal to /eks kubeconfig and K9S, we've got like our tools, Don't really have to do much. We alias tf equal to Terraform, and we cd infra. We could do tf show, have everything we need. We can tf init, right? These are your tools that you need as a dev, and you just get them with a Nix flake, and that can make your life a lot easier in sharing your software across teams. So that's a little bit of how we're using Nix flakes and Gitpod together to get to some reproducibility and support folks across local and remote dev environments. So yeah, Terraform's initialized. So now we're free to make changes. Another thing, let's say, yeah. So Julian's asking a good question. Is there a difference between a flake Nix and a shell Nix? Yeah, there is. A shell.nix is typically loaded by the program called Nix shell. This was originally in Nix 2.3, and this was a way to run a development shell given a path. So just to give you an example of Nix shell, if I wanted to run a Python 3.10 environment, I could run that, and now I'm running a Python 3.10 environment, right? So if I do Python -- version, it's 3.10.6. I don't have to worry. Similarly, if let me think of a way to do this. Yeah, like Nix shell -p. I don't know. Give me a program. What's a CLI program that you guys would like to use? Let's see if we can figure it out, and I'll bring it up for you. And I'll give you an example. Calsay. Yeah, that's easy. Okay, I like that. So Calsay. Right. And there we go. There's some locale issues. Oh well. Oops. But yeah, there you go. There's some Calsay. So yeah, Nix shell is a nice, convenient command line program available that allows you to take a file called shell.nix, make a shell with specific environments in it. So I think it was shells kates.nix is what I called it. that's there. But if you go to vim flake.nix, right, all it does is it uses this special template schema. So this is where Nix can be kind of difficult, is you'll have to go to the docs a lot for stuff like this. These formats are very obtuse. It's hard to understand sometimes. But once you get it running, everybody's happy. So it's generally glossed over. It's a write once kind of penalty for doing a lot of this stuff. And it does help. But yeah. All right, yeah, if you got another question.
So I'm actually curious now because I'm having like one of my own projects hosted on GitHub is having a shell.nix file. So whenever cding into it with dir, it activates and it installs like all dependencies I need for this project. So what's the benefit of using flake.nix instead of shell.nix? Or what would you recommend?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend a flake.nix. If you can do the migration. There's quite a few docs out there on how to make a migration from a shell.nix to a flake.nix. Most of it has to do with the way packages is handled. I'll give you an example of this. Shells cates.nix. If you look at the top of this, you see this packages import that I have. That's the world of Nix packages, right? That's constantly moving around us. So that's like, there's an update in kubectl, there's an update in doll, there's an update in the upturn program, right? Those are all things that just happen. And so what typically happens is folks will write something like this. Where, so if packages isn't defined, go ahead and import it from the local directory. When you use a flake, that goes away. And the reason that goes away is vim flake.nix. The inputs are actually pinned on these URLs. So that Nix packages URL is pinned to NixOS unstable. So it's the unstable branch of NixOS and all the packages that are inside of it. And if you actually look at the flake.lock, it provides you a schema to which it's actually locking your physical dependencies down to individual revisions on GitHub and hashes. So this is a specific point in time of this repo. And if I need to update this at any time, it's, I think it's like Nix Flake lock update or Nix Flake update. And this will go out and pull a more recent NixOS unstable version and update a lock file so that when I change my underlying dependencies, that'll flag and Git. That's a commit. It goes for PR. Everybody can agree on whether or not they want those tools at that version or not. So that's a way to do that. That's why a flake would be beneficial in my opinion. There's other tools out there. Flakes are as of Nix 2.4, which I would say was probably a year ago now. And they solved the problem of dependency pinning for Nix derivations, which is pretty important for teams that want consistent, reproducible developer environments. Go ahead.
So pushing this forward, this means that such flake makes a custom, or potentially makes a custom Gitpod Docker file unnecessary because you can define all dependencies you would in a custom Docker file inside a flake.nix, and you could like recheck your configuration without having to commit and always reopen your workspace.
Yes. That's the big shortcut for us is, for us, like for example, we would have application repos where we would have pre-commit hooks that required installing pre-commit, right? So one of the things that's interesting there is you'd go, oh man, we got to go install pre-commit. Like, let's go update the Gitpod Docker file, go through a new pre-build, see how it iterates, look at the output, make sure we have the right version, make sure it's going to be okay for the devs long term. Or I can just tell them, why does it, there we go. We can just say, nixenv-ia nix packages dot pre-commit. Now they're going to have pre-commit at 2.20. I didn't need to reload a Docker file. I didn't need to do anything, right? That's in there. There is no execution of the Nix code in the gitpod.yaml, believe it or not, Jacob. I don't think. Let me see. let me bat my .gitpod.yaml. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure durenv is available in this repo by default. So I'll answer that question for you real quick. There are literally no tasks, so we're not doing any execution. So hopefully that answers your question, Jacob. It's in workspace full. Durenv is in workspace full by default, as well as Nix at a version that accepts flakes. So just happens to be there. Pretty neat way to get packages without changing a Docker file. And I'm sure you could do something very similar. Yes, Jeff, I'm sure is a reason why this is here. I'm very confident of that fact. Yeah. So that's a little bit about Nix and how we use it here at Lofty. And yeah, any other questions? Happy to answer them. If you got use cases too, you can always find me on Twitter. I'm available there. Happy to answer questions. The Nix community it's available. It's a hard thing to learn though. It's got a learning curve to it. I won't lie to you. So yeah, go ahead and ask.
I can confirm this because I'm using Nix as package manager on my Mac, and finding documentation is sometimes quite tough to understand. So it's a lot of trial and error. But the question I wanted to ask is, would you run this, or could you potentially pre-build your entire Nix cache or something?
Yes.
Would this make sense, or would you always run this?
It would make sense because you'd want to warm up the Nix store on your newly launched instance, right? And the best task for that would likely be via a GitHub init task that runs on every workspace start, and that will allow you to basically populate with a built derivation. And that would be really helpful because if the Nix store is pre-populated with your stuff, your durenv is going to go a lot faster. It's going to happen pretty much instantaneously because it's already built and available in the store. So yeah. What's the difference between Nix on its own and Nix OS? Man, they are made by the same people, and this is like an endless source of confusion. Nix is a language. Nix packages is like brew. Nix OS is an entire Linux operating system that's written with Nix and Nix packages. So there's 3 different Nixes in that question, and that's what they are. There's a lot going on there. Yeah. Everything's Nix. Yeah. For example, if you guys are curious, like I run my entire NeoVim configuration out of there. So like I can say alias vim equals nix run GitHub neovim flake main. And if I say vim, it's going to go download my neovim with all my configuration in it. And then it'll open it up. I don't think I've configured this to use a good binary cache. So binary caching is something you can use. We have cachex in there in the default Gitpod workspace image. So if I say vim and I use my cache that's over on cachex, this will go a lot quicker. Otherwise, I'll have to build the stuff from scratch, and that can be kind of slow. But yeah, it's fun. My teammates who are a little more Linux sysadmin kind of folks, they are very skeptical of Gitpod, and that gpinner script really helped them adopt using a remote platform and taking advantage of pre-build. We had a lot of issue with folks switching branches, dirty state, all the things that come with just traditional application development on a local host or even a remote host of just like some VM somewhere, and getting folks to change their mind a little bit helped, and to help them understand the benefits of pre-builds. And it worked out for the better. I say crusty, I don't know. It's like they've been toasted too long, right? I don't mean it in the dirty sense. I mean it in like they've been in the oven too long cooking in their Linux world, and they're just burnt, you know? That's just how it is. Yeah. And Brew is in Gitpod too. Yeah. So you do have Brew. So yeah, here's a full NeoVim with our directory. So don't even need VS Code, right? And that's the beauty of Gitpod, is it's not about VS Code. It's about IntelliJ. It's about VS Code in the browser. It's about VS Code local through Secure Shell, through terminal. It's whatever you want it to be. It's just some VM and GCP that you can shell into and do your work, right? And hopefully they're being built all the time. Hopefully you're using a Gitpod YAML. Hopefully you're taking advantage of the pre-builds so that folks have their dev environments as quick as possible. And we can reduce that friction.
Nice. I was gonna say, we're now at the hour. Has anyone got any more questions for Evan? Or Evan, were you gonna show another thing?
No, I'm good. That's it. That's basically it. I was just wanting to show, those particular things. The only thing I'll mention, I know Gitpod, you guys have on the public roadmap a public API for loading and visualizing workspaces. That GPinner script is probably going to incorporate some gRPC to talk to that public API long term, right? So I'm imagining like a little TUI application for my sysadmin folks that they can log in, they can see their active workspaces, they can pick one, and they'll shell in straight away. So hopefully if that's on the roadmap, that's definitely something that's helpful for my team. That's just an opinion.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. If no one else got any more questions whilst Evan is on the call, I'm just seeing people typing now. So we'll give him a second.
Cool.
Oh, just feedback. That session was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Cool. Well, Evan, I know that you have to jump on another call in a bit, so I think we'll leave it there. Thank you everyone for joining the community office hours. Have a lovely rest of your day.